So what we want to do here is adjust the height of the blade. I'm just using a piece of tin to do that. And I've already changed the blade to a metal blade, which in effect just turns your skill saw into a grinder. Now I also have a little mark I've probably chalked on there. And you see this end is pretty ragged, so what I want to do is just essentially cut it off. And it's just kind of a don't get in a big hurry and kind of more come down on it from the hills to the valleys. Now what I want to point out here is there's a couple of different kinds of tin that I ended up using. This is the thicker gauge stuff right here, and I'm showing you how to cut it as opposed to the thinner stuff because it's a different proposition trying to bend this stuff. I was quite surprised that it wouldn't bend. I mean sure it would bend if you had enough weight on it, but I didn't have enough weight to bend it. So what I had to do was basically do a relief cut. So I go out there in the middle, and I figure that's about how deep I want that cut to be. So I, in effect, just use my level there to mark how deep I want to go. And really, I'm just going to cut from there to the level. Now, you might say, well, why don't you just bend it without this? And the answer is this stuff is too thick. It's really, really hard to bend. Very, very, very heavy gauge tin. Now, as it turns out, I found another batch of tin around here that was probably half this gauge, and I didn't have any trouble at all getting it to bend the whole length. So that's actually what I ended up using the most, I suppose. But once you have your relief cut in it, you'll see what I mean. When I try to bend it here, it's like really stiff, unruly stuff. I pretty much have to get all my weight on it. Now, if a guy was really using his head, he'd probably have gloves on here. The other thing I want to point out to you is when you're cutting this stuff here, you probably should have goggles on. I didn't do that. I have safety glasses on, but you really should use goggles because you notice there's a lot of sparks that one gets. So as you can see, I can, even using all my weight, it's all I can do to get that thing to bend. Now, the other thing you might notice here is that piece of plywood that I'm working on. In effect, that's what a lot of people would call a sacrificial board. The blade on my saw goes through and cuts into it. In fact, all the smoking you see when I'm cutting, that's really what it's all about. It's cutting into that board. I suppose if you had help, you might be able to, bend the whole sheet without putting a relief cut in it. But that relief cut doesn't really hurt any. I mean, I'll show you later on that I just essentially covered up with a piece of wood, so it doesn't represent any kind of a problem to anybody that might be working around a garden. Of course, these edges are really sharp, so one of the things I'm going to do is, effectively put kind of bracing around over the top of it so that you can't accidentally get cut on one of these corners or what have you. And that's basically it. You're essentially ready to go right here. That's your cut and fold for tin.